Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And I think it's going to be a very interesting and informative evening on a topic that I think everybody here and maybe Jews all over the world talk about all the time. And I have the pleasure, my name is Steve Savitsky, I know most of you, of course, but not everyone. And I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Eli Paley. Eli is the publisher and the owner of Mishpacha magazine, and the largest media company actually in Israel, and then of course in America. And I had the great pleasure several months ago, in February, when I went to Israel through the Conference of Presidents of major Jewish organizations. They invited, we always had different speakers, and Eli was one of the speakers. And I was really so impressed with everything that he's doing and what he's trying to accomplish, that we communicated with each other. And I said, if you ever come to the States, please come to the 5 towns. And I'm sure people here would love to hear what you have to say. So what we're going to have is a little dialogue this evening. I'm going to ask some questions. I didn't show him the questions, so by the way, okay, just in case you're interested. But he doesn't need it. He's heard every question you could ask. And he's one of the few people, I think, who I've met who's really trying to come up with solutions. People always come up with problems. He's coming up with solutions. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to talk about, I want to kind of go back to the very beginning of the state of Israel. And I want to talk about what was the origin of the arrangement between Ben Gurion and was it the Chazon Ish, or with the whole Chareidi world. And that was basically the genesis of what started, and from there we go.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure. I think that whenever you want to speak about understand or get an understanding about the Chareidi society in general, especially in Israel, and specifically in the issue of the draft and the army, we have to go back to the early days. And usually people go back to this mainly to say Ben Gurion agreed for 400 yeshiva boys, but today it's not 400, we're talking about 60,000, so not anymore. But I think that we need to really understand the fundamental debate that was at that time. And I'm referring mainly to the meeting, the famous meeting between the Chazon Ish and Ben Gurion in 1951. By the way, most of the people believe that the conversation was about the draft of the yeshiva guys, which that wasn't. The agreement about examining the Chareidi yeshiva boy from the army was much before, when Ben Gurion agreed and Shimon Peres was involved. The issue was the Shirut Leumi for women. So when Ben Gurion approached the Chazon Ish, he was trying to speak to the Chareidi politicians about the need to agree that every boy and girl, but especially the issue was girls, even those who doesn't want to serve in the army, at least they will do national service, what we call Shirut Leumi. And he spoke to the Chareidi politicians, and they said, no way, the Gedolim won't agree. So Ben Gurion said, so let me speak to the Gedolim, let me go to speak to the Chazon Ish. And I'm mentioning it not just to give you like an historical content, because even today, talking about the issue of integrating Chareidim in the army, I'm always saying to people, without sitting around the table and first understanding the core dilemma and the core narratives of each side, we can do progress. So people are wishing, and I'm jumping to today, if we wish, if the Chareidim, especially after October 7, will go to the army, everything will be solved. And I said, if we won't do it right and properly, it's not going to work, because the next day will be, what about the girls? If we don't agree that we have that the Chareidi society is trying to preserve some special lifestyle, and they have the sense of mission about making sure that Torah will continue, so then we can come to the solution. And I think going back to the conversation between the Chazon Ish and Ben Gurion, it's amazing, by the way, to see when Ben Gurion writes in his diary, and he said, I'm going to meet the Chazon Ish, and I'm going to say, and this is something like was written today, he said, people are coming from all countries in the world back to Israel. We are a small country. The Arabs wants to kill us. how can we live together? How can we make sure that we will survive? How can we, that we have different opinions about Jewish identity, can live together? That was the question that Ben-Gurion didn't start the conversation by asking, okay, what solution, what deal we can do? Maybe we'll agree about not all the girls will do Shurut Leumi, maybe partially Shurut Leumi. He said, let's discuss about the principles. I'm building a country. We're doing a miracle to try to build something after 2,000 years, but we need to come to some kind of agreement. And then the famous response of the Chazon Ish was using the Gemara, the halacha about when two camels, I think, it speaks about sheep, so I think two camels are meeting each other in a way that they can't walk together, so the one who is carrying, Gamal Ta'un, like you have to make room to the one who is carrying. And Ben-Gurion was very upset about it. He said, well, we are empty, and always when people are quoting this story, again, they're saying, Chazon Ish was saying that we are full and you are empty. That wasn't the point. Chazon Ish said, you have to understand, you're doing some, I would call it, experiment. It's a new experiment about Jewish life. We are carrying a heritage of 2,000 years, or maybe 3,000 years of Torah and devotion to Avodas Hashem. And if you want to live together, you have to make room that we will be able to continue to carry what we are carrying. And that was the point that Chazon Ish was trying to say. You find some compromise, you want to find some solution. First, you need to realize that we are carrying something that in order that we will be able to live together, we have to make sure that it will happen. And again, taking it back to our days, and we'll continue talking the details, we just want to. So any conversation about the challenges and the pain that we're facing today, and it's really, I'm talking about this issue because it's the most burning issue, it's the most painful issue. From my perspective, it's also causing, in a way, even a big Chilul Hashem. I'm not saying Chilul Hashem because Chareidim are not behaving nice, because the definition of Chilul Hashem based on the Gemara in Maseches Yuma, the Gemara says, what's Chilul Hashem? Or what's Kiddush Hashem? So the Gemara says, "Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, sheyehei Shem Shamayim yitahev aletcha." It's not enough that you are loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to make sure that other people will appreciate and love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think what happens today, and when people, and the Gemara is continuing and saying, and when people are looking at yeshiva guy, someone who is studying Torah, and said, "Ashrei Oviv Shelimdo Torah, Ashrei Rabbi Shelimdo Torah." Manoi Maiso, you're looking at what he's doing and you're saying, this is someone that you would like to appreciate, to admire. So this is a Kiddush Hashem. And the contrary is a Chilul Hashem. And what happened today, and again, without saying whose blame it is, the fact that people are looking at the Chareidi Yeshivanite, or devoting their life day and night to Torah learning, and look at them as egoists, as people, unmoral people, it's an issue that we have to solve. It's not about just explaining. We have to solve the issue.
Okay. I want to ask you another question. So, what is really the difference between Dati Leumi and Chareidi? Where is the nafkamina? What's the real difference between them?
So first I have a joke about it.
Okay.
I once met, I don't know if you're familiar with Rav Yoshua Katz. He's the rabbi of Ma'ale Edomim. He's the brother of Yaakov Katz from Yeshivat HaKotel. We met at the old city, and he said, why Mishpacha is not writing enough about Yeshivat Har Amor? You know, Har Amor, Yeshiva for Tau. You know, they're very close to Chareidim. We call them in Israel Chardalim. Chardalim is like Chareidi, Dati Leumi. And he said they're really like Chareidim, and they're reading Mishpacha. So you have to give some more space and recognition to them. And I said, yeah, it's definitely a point we have to do. But I said, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? What's the difference between Chardalim and Charedim? Then I'll get to the Leumi and Charedim. What's the difference between Chardalim and Charedim? There are serious in Torah learners learning no less than Charedim, maybe some of them even more, in terms of modesty, in terms of devotion to halacha, in terms of mesirus nefesh, in terms of living a simple way. So what's the difference? And I said, Chardalim is Charedim without a sense of humor. So his Rebbetzon was laughing, and the rabbi said, I have to think about it. Okay, so that was my joke about Charedim and Charedim. I think the key issue between Charedim and non-Charedim, always when people asking me, how are you defining Charedim? It's very hard, by the way, to define Chareidim because there is so many variants of Chareidim. So it's not a definition, but it's a way that you can really get a sense who is someone who is adapting the main values of Chareidim. I think that the core value of the Chareidi world, and not just in Israel, all over the world, is the Torah study, learning Torah, at least at the age, between the age of, let's say, 14 to 21, 22, should be the main basic, meaning Torah learners. Even if you're planning to go then to college, even if you're learning in Rabbi Cheit Ma'arava with doing some yeshiva high school, but understanding that by the time of formulating your identity, studying Torah in the old way, sitting in Beis Medrash day and night, this is the core value that has to be focused. And by the way, that's the main issue why always when you have a conversation with Rabbonim, can we add something? They have a problem because that time, the definition is Torah as the core value and the core, how you say, you're putting your time and energy into it. The Leumi adds some other values that some of them believe that they are equal to Torah, meaning Eretz Israel, even serving the country by some of them. And I think this is the main issue, the main tension between Chareidim and non-Chareidim, that Chareidim see solely Torah or studying Torah and learning Torah as a core issue, and then let's talk about the rest, meaning we have to do some living, maybe we have to do chesed, but first Torah learning. And the religious Zionists believe, and they have a point, that Torah is important, but there is some other important things, and one of the consequences of this is that some of the religious Zionists lost their kids because it's hard to raise, and again, I'm saying it not in criticism, I'm saying why it's complicated. It's much easier to raise someone that has one value, everything is sheker, everything is irrelevant, Torah and Torah only. But you're trying to raise someone and saying, serving in the army is important, learning Torah is important, serving the country is important, doing national service is important, and then someone saying, so what about if I don't really want to study Torah, I not even want to continue to keep Shabbos, but I want to be in a sayeret. I'm not considered to be, and that's what Chareidim are very, very afraid about. Meaning the experience that the religious Zionists, or the price that they pay for their devotion to do the combination of Torah and country and army, something that Chareidim are afraid of. I just want to mention to you of Chaim Navon. He's a very famous rabbi in Israel, so he wrote an article, and he said, we, the religious Zionists, the same that we know that when we're sending someone to the army, some of the boys won't come back, unfortunately, lo aleinu, they will be died. We also take into account that some also will lose their religious. And this is part of our sacrifice to what we have to do. So sending a boy to the army, some will be killed, and some will lose their religious. And I said, this is exactly what Chareidim shouldn't hear, because this is exactly where the dispute between Chareidim is saying, we can have a talk about the army, we can have a talk about so many other things, but first make sure that we're not going to lose what we see as our main mission, to make sure that Torah will continue and flourish, and every way that you want to address this issue without understanding the Chareidi concern about what the price we're going to pay by adding something into our core value, you're losing their ability to have the conversation.
Okay, I mean, I'm sure that there will be people here who kind of disagree with what you're saying,
In what regard?
That you're saying in the Chareidi world, it's Torah, and if you do anything else, it's going to interfere with Torah. And in the religious Zionist world, Dati Leumi, they're saying you could be as religious and care so much about Torah as you do anything else, but at the same time there's an obligation, because you live in a country, like you said, surrounded by people who want to kill you, and so therefore you can't just say, well, okay, I would like to sit and just learn Torah all day, but it would be great if someone else would take my place, but someone has to do it, right?
Steve, I didn't say, I was trying just to describe
right.
what I didn't say who is right or wrong. I'm just saying.
I agree with you, and that's why I think now what I want to do is I really want to get into your whole plan, because I think when people begin to understand, I mean, I don't think people are going to begin to read this tremendous work that he put together, but actually through his foundation, he's been working for years on putting together a plan, because Eli is a person who looks for solutions. We all can find problems. It's easy enough to do. Finding solutions is much more difficult. And I think
have to work hard to find the problems. They are all around.
right, but part of the solution that you're talking about has to do with the fact that after a certain age, maybe Chareidim should be involved. So let's talk about your plan, called the Executive Program 2030, and the goal, a very, very lofty goal of actually getting 50,000 Chareidim involved in the
ecosystem of Israeli security.
Israel, right. So let's talk about it and how it works, because I think people will be very interested in what you have to say.
Okay, so as I said, my main concern, and by the way, I started to work on this plan 6 months before October 7th. We started to work on it in the middle of 2023. By the time that was the big fight and dispute in the Israeli society. And I said we have, that when I came to the conclusion that I said, we have to address the core issue that Israel is facing. Because when you saw hundreds of thousands of people going and demonstrating every Motzei Shabbos, every Shabbos afternoon, so I asked myself, what really is their main concern? Yeah, they were fighting about the judicial reform, but that wasn't the issue. That was the excuse of something more deeper that I felt bothered the people. And unfortunately, many of my friends are in Kaplan. I have some weakness to left-wing people. So seriously, many of my friends are people that I don't see eye to eye with them about that, but we're close friends and appreciate each other. And I find that the main concern of people is, after 75, 76 years of the state of Israel, how Israel is going to look like within a decade or 2 decades. That was the main concern. Taking into account the demographic shift, the fact that Chareidi society and the religious society is growing rapidly. Today, Chareidim are 13% of the Israeli population. In the 80s, 80-something, it was like 4%. But just to give one figure, every 4th child today in the first class in the Jewish schools is Chareidi child. So meaning 25% of the kids are already Chareidi kids, and you don't have to be anti-Chareidi or to be paranoid to ask how the country is going to look like when those young kids are going to grow and the threats are not going to disappear, and Israel is facing, we're living in a neighborhood and that it's not a privilege, and to say, okay, maybe, no, it's existential. The economy, the science, security is not just about having more soldiers. Security is about building a resilience, building talented people who can make Israel always to be on the top front of the technology, building a strong economy. And I find that this is the main concern of the people. Okay, so some people maybe are expressing it in a wrong way, but this is a concern. And I said, it's about time not just to say, oh, you don't understand us, you don't appreciate. Let's sit around the table and see what can we do about it. And we decided to address 4 issues that are the core issues of the future of Israel: security, education, economy and employment, and religious and state. This is the 4 core issues that I felt that we need not just to find a new deal or a new solution. It's about time, after 75 years, to reevaluate each of these areas. Yes, we have the status quo agreement, but it's about time to look into it. So, and I decided to start with the security. Again, 6 months before October 7th. And what I was saying was the following. By the world of October 6, when the philosophy was that we need a small and sophisticated army, when I spoke, and I spent many years dealing with the issue of the security and army, I felt that the army is saying, meaning the customer is saying, we don't need Chareidim. Not just that we don't need Chareidim, we don't even want to have Chareidim. That was the case. And even today, when I'm talking to key people in the army, they admit, they said that was the policy. And the politicians are pushing us, maybe the Supreme Court is pushing us, but from our perspective, meaning from the professional perspective, we don't need Chareidim. Not just that we don't need them, the army did already some changes in terms of being more liberal, progressive, having more women serving, not just serving in general, getting them into combat units and so on and so on. Again, I'm not saying it's a good or bad. I'm saying that was the policy. So why should we, by the time that we are not desperate to have more people, start to change the entire ecosystem because someone of the politicians wants to have Chareidim? I said, okay, so let's put it aside. Yes, people are fighting, but it's not the issue. But there is another question that we have to ask ourselves. Looking at the big challenges of the Israel national security challenges, and as I said, looking at the forecast, looking 10, 15, 20 years ahead, what are the threats? What are the demographic shifts? How Israel is going to address and be ready to address these issues? And again, I said over the first 75 years, because we never agreed or find a solution about the draft issue, we paid a huge economy price. The fact that many of Chareidim men, I'm not talking about people who are sitting and learning Torah, that by Chareidim going to work was an issue, was because over the first 75 years of the state of Israel, if you are Chareidi, as long as you didn't go to the army, you couldn't go to work. So meaning, if Chareidi man wants, by the way, not just want to leave the yeshiva, wants to stay and learn in Koilel, and he wants to have a side job. He wants by the evening to do something, to have some income, okay, to make some living. It was illegal in Israel. I'll tell you soon a story about myself when I was learning in Hebron Yeshiva. So I said, over the first 75 years, because we were fighting about yes or no draft, we paid a huge economy price. Both the Chareidi society paid and the Israeli economy paid the price. And this is an issue that I was dealing with this over 20 years. And I said, I'm afraid that if we won't sit around the table and have a serious discussion about what are the real challenges that Israel is facing a decade, 2 decades ahead, and we won't try to at least ask the question, there is a need, there is something that we need to do differently in order to address this issue, we are going to face, chas v'chalila, a real threat on the future of Israel. And I said there is two advantages of reframing the conversation this way. A, because I think that this is the only relevant question. Again, by the world of October 6th, because yes, draft, I'm not saying, I'm not underestimating, yes, there is equality, fairness, there is issues. I'm not saying that, it's simple, but I'm saying these are issues, okay, some social issues, but this is not a real security existential issue. But asking this question, do we need more scientists within 10, 15 years? I'm not talking about the army yet. Do we need more people to protect the home front? Do we need more people in the defense industry? Okay, so let's see. And I started to work the way we are working. I put together like a steering committee of top experts from the Malal, which is the Israeli High Council of Security, from the Mossad, from different army units, top experts. And I said, your job is really to do the analysis. I mean, I'm not expert in this field. So first, let's try to look about the scenarios, about what are the threats that we are facing. And our job will be which of these areas we can come with solutions that Chareidi can integrate without touching the complicated and most sensitive issue of Chareidi draft. And as I said, there is two reasons or two advantages of the reframing the conversation this way. A, because as I said, from my perspective, this is the question that has to be asked. Okay, you can fight, yes army, no army, but it's not yes or no army. It's about our existential, okay, our security. And I said secondly, and this is a very important point, I said, when you want to come to speak to the Chareidi leaders, they're not apathic to the challenges. They are concerned, they're afraid of the results, what will happen if we'll do some changes. But I said the problem is that until today, and since the conversation between Chazon Ish and the Ben Gurion was never a conversation between the security leaders of Israel and the Chareidi Gedolim talking about the challenges. Just not saying, okay, those are the challenges, therefore send your kids to the army. No, I'm not. Just to let the Gedolim to understand what Israel is facing, what are the threats that we are expecting or afraid of. I met with Netanyahu maybe it was already a year ago. By the time that I presented him when it was in early stage, this program, and I came to present it to Netanyahu. He was afraid by the time that Chareidim will rock the government because of the draft issue, so on and so on. And I said to him, if you are concerned, he wants to convince me that we have to write in Mishpacha that if Chareidim will break the government, so the next government will be worse. I said, anything has to do with politics, you should talk to my editors, it's not my field. Talk to them, and he met with them and he spoke. But I said to him, if you ask me what you should do, I said, you should do Chazon Ish Ben Gurion meeting. You, Netanyahu, should ask to have a meeting with the three Moyatzes together, the Hasidim, the Litvishes, and the Sfaradim. Bring with you top experts. I said to Netanyahu, I would recommend you to bring Yoav Gallant, but I know that you're not talking to each other, so bring some other people with you. Go to them and say the following. Said, I'm not coming to you because I want to convince you to send your kids to the army. We are now facing a problem. You know, the Supreme Court are showing Gemurim, they're against the yeshivas, and this is my problem. I'm working with your politicians to solve the problem. It's a political problem. We'll solve the problem. But I just want you to understand, to be aware about what are the threats that Israel is facing today, within 5 or 10 years. And I said, and the important thing, don't come to this conversation when you know already what the answer is. I want to convince you, so please send your kids to the army. No, I want to...
Let me ask you a question, Elio. Don't you think that the Gedolim know what the threats are? No. You have to have a meeting with generals and Yahoo. I mean, they're living in Israel. They know what the threat is. This is even before October 7th.
No, that was after October 7th.
No. Okay, so certainly after October 7th, you don't think Rav Landau knows about what Israel's going to look like in 10 years or 20 years?
How does he know?
I mean...
No. First, listen. After working with the expert that we were working with, and we saw presentations from, we worked with the YILC, he was the former head of the Malal. We worked with top people from the Mossad, and they gave us, our team, an analysis. I think that the average Israeli person doesn't even know. People know in general that we are facing, but you know, when I'm talking to Chareidim, by the way, and as someone who lost sleep about this issue, and I'm sharing with them this issue, and I'm saying, listen, Rabbi Yisrael, we are facing a real issue. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. And you know, Baruch Hashem, we're living after big miracles that happened since the beepers and everything that it's unbelievable. But the scenarios that the army was ready for, they were talking about hundreds of missiles a day. You know, I met with Yuli Edelstein 2 months ago, and he said, well, I presented him the plan, and one of the chapters that we wrote was about how we should be prepared for emergency crisis, meaning in a case that Khalila, an attack will happen from Iran, Hezbollah, Gaza, missiles. So the home front is telling the municipalities in Israel, I want to let you know that in the first 24 to 72 hours, don't count on us. We're not going to be there. We're going, if we will have such a high level of attack, we will have to put all our efforts and defense missiles and Kippat Barzel, Iron Dome, whatever, just to protect the strategic sites, Air Force bases, energy, some other places, and then buildings. And that was a scenario. The scenario was that buildings in the center of Israel, in Tel Aviv, building will collapse and nobody will be there. So this is a scenario that nobody is aware of, okay? And I said, I want the Rabbanim to be aware, again, not because, and by the way, the main problem today, when we have this conversation, people are talking about the main concerns, but it's very hard to them to leave aside their agenda and just to talk about the concerns. Meaning, when I'm meeting my friends, the Tilumi friends, who are very upset and very painful about the Chareidim, and I'm telling them, I totally understand you. I understand where you're coming from. But if you're coming to Chareidim, instead of talking about what are the needs, and you're saying, it's about time that you will combine Torah and Tzava, you're losing them. Because combining, what the Shita, we have a different Shita. Talking about what are the needs, let's talk about the needs. And the problem is that people are saying, oh, this is maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu made all October 7, that Chareidim will finally realize the importance of the combination of Torah. Chareidim will continue to realize the Torah and Torah solely is the most important things. But they're still open to have this kind of conversation. So when I'm meeting with Chareidi people, even today, and I'm sharing with them this concern, so they said, no, but the IDF is so strong. We can fight everything. I said, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we have the real answers. I'm not sure. I said, but we have nuclear bombs. So That's the general response. Someone who went to the army, or someone who have a son that he was an officer in the army, have a much better knowledge about what are the reality.
So let's get into your plan, because what you're suggesting is that after the age of 24, so they have time to learn, and they're in the yeshiva, okay, because Torah is the Ikar. After the age of 24, the Chareidi world will then go into the Miluyim, but perhaps a new form of that, and they will be protecting not just the home front, but all the areas that they are. So they're, in a way, you're kind of getting them into the army, but in a little different way. And based upon what I've read, in your studies, you say that in the studies you've done, 70% of the Chareidim say that they would be willing to enroll and enlist in a program like that, correct?
Yeah.
Exactly.
70% of the working Chareidi over the age of 24. But just to conclude what I started, I said, when I started to work on the issue, I said the way to have this conversation and really getting the attention of the Gedolim is talking about real understanding about the threats and leave aside the narratives. Don't try to build a new shita. Let's just talk about the real needs. So talking about needs and understanding, and everybody understands that today we're facing a new reality. So definitely that can open the hearts and can bring a solution. So what we did, we were mapping what are the main areas that, especially after October 7, needs a new approach. The first one was the challenge of protecting the home front. This is something that until today, I'm talking even today, May 7, I don't know what the date today, the Israeli IDF doesn't have yet a strategy how to protect from a scenario that happened or didn't happen by October 7, because the real scenario of October 7, what happened, sorry to say, it's a joke. And I'm not saying that it's a joke, but it's a joke, because the real plan was that the Hamas and Nukhba will attack from the south, but they don't just take few villages, a few kibbutzim. They will conquer cities like Ashkelon and other cities. By the same time, the Raduan from the north will take Tiberias and Kiryat Shmona, and again, not some villages. And that was the plan. By the same time, Arabs from the Palestinian Authority will go over settlements, yeshuvim, again, thousands of them terrorists. And what we were facing by Shomer HaChomot, that we saw what happened. And that the first time that we saw that Israel doesn't have a strategy, when Israeli Arab terrorists were attacking mixed cities like Lod and Akko and other places, nobody were there. People were calling the police and asking for help, and nobody came there. So that's the issue that our experts said, this is a crucial issue that we don't have an answer yet. And especially now that we're facing a shortage of fighters, nobody is ready to think about a new place. Just Herzi Halevi, 4 or 5 months ago, he spoke, and we were working on it over a year and a half ago, and he said we need tens of thousands of reserve soldiers just to protect the home front. Okay? By the way, it was one initiative just that started called Ugdat David. It was really addressing the same issue. Was done by, came from, by the way, some entrepreneurs, not from the army. And the idea was their focus was mainly protecting the borders. The idea was, how can we recruit people who were already in the army and did reserve? By the time that October 6th, that the army was a small and sophisticated army, so they closed units, huge units of thousands of soldiers. There is today over 100 or maybe even more than 100,000 capable soldiers. They serve at the Miluim, the army released them, and even till today, the army didn't bother themselves yet, try to bring them back. It's much easier to call the same guy again and again instead of rebuilding new units. And they said, what they did, voluntarily, they asked people, can you join us? I just wrote in Globes last week that they were able to recruit 10,000 soldiers that has the right training and background to join voluntarily these units. So the idea was that there is a huge challenge today that we need to address. The army is saying, the Malal is saying that we need to build a unit called the National Guard, and we need, they're asking to get additional 8,000 people from Mishmar HaGvul. Today they have 8,000, they want to get additional 8,000, but the human resource, Akka, is saying we can give you 0 because we are struggling.
So your plan is to bring them into the army in a different type of way. But once again, Chareidi, tens of thousands of Chareidim over the age of 24 are now part of this National Guard, part of the army. And so, but here's the question I have. Your plan requires some savlanut. And the country is almost ready to break apart.
We don't know in Hebrew what's the meaning, in Israel, what's the meaning word of savlanut means.
Yeah, I know, that's true.
Patient,
okay,
patient.
But I'm saying,
in Hebrew, we're not using the word anymore.
But that's a real issue, isn't it? That the fact that your plan is a good plan, and I've read through your plan completely. I think it can work, but you need time to implement it.
The opposite. Our plan, that by the way was written by top experts from the army.
Right.
The two people who wrote it, and you will see in the credit. One of them was the head of human resources at the Air Force, and he was the head of the Department of Planning in the Planning Department of the Army. He's a Tataluf, by the way, not religious. And the other one was in the Strategic Department of the Army. So I hired a top expert to write. It's not like, okay, it's a Chareidi idea. I put around the table the top experts and wrote, and after a long conversation with the top experts in the Army. And this is really an opportunity to push the Army. That's the idea, to push the Army to touch a field that they're not touching. And I say to the Army, I'm not touching your resources. If you're limited with resources, stay with whatever. I'm ready to bring you voluntarily people who already were exempt from the Army because they're over the age of serving in the Army. The age was 24, now it's pushing, it became 26 and 27. And I'm talking about working Chareidim. Again, I'm not touching the Torah learners. People are learning Torah, leave them aside for a minute. Yeshiva guys, for sure, leave them aside. But why a Haredi man like me, who is working and wish to do, why he's not part of the army? And the idea, in order to make it happen, you need to do two things. First, it needs to be a real need, because even after the war, after October 7, 6,500 Haredi men reached out to the army, begging them that they want to do, it's called Shlav Bet. They want to do a training and join the reserves. How many of them were recruited? After begging the army, 1,200. How many of them were placed in doing miluim? Only 600, meaning less than 10% of Haredi men who knocked on the door and said, we are willing to join. And what kind of training they got? They got like 2-3 weeks, like a joke. It's like, I'm calling it the summer camp.
So why was that? I mean, why didn't they accept more Charedim into the army? Because,
again, the army is, I want to be melamed zchut, I'm not criticizing. The army is still in the trauma of the war. The war is not ended yet. And thinking about new plans and new ideas, leave it aside. So Chareidi want to come, so let them do something. We'll give them like 2 weeks to do some, feel good about the army, but you don't need them. What I did, I said, okay, this is a real need. You, the army, don't have an answer for it. We have we can bring you people that they are not, again, from your pool. They are not from the people that you are anticipating to get them into the army. And this is a real way. And again, back to my philosophy. I'm saying this is the first time that you are not asking Charedim, please go to the army because it's not nice that you have to go to the army. We're talking about a pikuach nefesh, a real need. And it's not just a real need of the state of Israel, it's a real need in general in Israel, and it's a double real need for the Haredi cities, because if, let's say, if a regular yishuv or city is really facing this threat, at least they have people who have some army experience, some people are carrying gun, they have kitot konenut, but Haredi areas, they have nobody. So even in terms of just taking care about your own needs, you have to do it. So the first, again, as I said, there is two principles. First, it has to be a real need, and this is a real need. Meaning, it's a first time an opportunity for Chareidim to contribute a meaningful contribution to the security, and not to do some joke in the army. And secondly, we were working to create a serious training program. Meaning, if you want these people to be able to fight with terrorists, we know that the terrorists today are not as used to be, like small Arab coming with the home shoes and a knife. No. They're talking about serious terrorists, trained and weapons and RPG and whatever. So you need people, in one of the roundtable I did with some Chareidim to interview them about the plan. So one of them said, it's a great idea, but please, in my city, don't send Chareidim to protect me. I need a real soldiers. but the idea was that we really want to train them, so we built a plan. I spoke to David Zili, that is in charge of the whole army school, talking about between 2 to 3 months of a serious training, focusing on training them to be able to fight terror, and then immediately they can serve, they can join and make the service. So what I was told by the top people of the army, the contrary. All the idea of Hashmonaim and how can we bring young people will take maybe decades till you see results. This is something that you can do it from today to tomorrow. We have a waiting list of thousands of Chareidim who are wishing to participate and join. So you can get 5,000 Chareidim, and I'm telling you, after talking to the army, within a year. 10,000 within 2 years. So this is, I was told by Vadmani. Vadmani is the head of staff of Akka. He's the second person in Akka. And he said from all the programs that we have today, the only one who is addressing the immediate need, B, the only way that we can really take some burden from the reserves who are collapsing, imagine what will happen, again, we're wasting time, but if we will have today 6, 10 units, Gdudim, Gdud is like 400 or 500 of Chareidi people that they could be already after the training, because it takes 2-3 months and immediately you could be, we will be able to send some of these reserves back home.
So why isn't it happening? I mean, if you say we could get it done, you could have 5,000 to 10,000 Chareidi soldiers in part of the army. So what's preventing it from happening?
You want the real answer?
Guys, you want the real answer?
Everybody, no, I'll tell you, I just had a conversation this week with Dado Bar Khalifa. Dado Bar Khalifa is the head of Akka. And I was sending, I met with, there is a group of reserves women, Neshot Miluim. I presented to them 2 months ago, and by the way, they are the big fighters against Chareidi. And they have a point. Okay, so they're doing lobby with the people from the Likud, Knesset members from the Likud, and people from the Zionist organizations don't support the Chok HaIshtamtut and whatever. When they heard about our program, they became the big supporters. And they are now pushing the army. Said, how come that you have a solution that, and again, I checked this solution, I checked also with Chareidi politicians. None of the Chareidi politicians is pushing this, because said our main concern now is to make sure that we'll find a solution for these Shir boys. But they say it's definitely a great idea. So the main problem is that everybody now is fighting about how can we draft Chareidi boys at the age of 18 instead of trying to work with what is working.
Right. So you're changing the paradigm. You're saying, let's not concentrate on, let's draft 18-year-old boys, and I just read today, I mean, they said like 10,000 notices out, they get 200 people to come. Let's forget about that now. Let's look at the population, which is a little bit older, to over 24, and those people want to go into the army. It seems like a very logical, here's the only question. In the Chareidi world, the Gedolei Torah have a great say into what happens. Are you getting their haskama? Are they in favor of this, or are they against it, or are they neutral?
The problem today is, and again, that's the painful part of the story. Right after October 7th, we saw such a big willingness of the Chareidi society to participate. You saw people, again, as I mentioned, 6,500 people went and asked to go to the army. People went to support soldiers, to support Chareidi organizations. Chareidi women create organizations of thousands of Chareidi volunteers, women, who went every Friday to meet the reserves' wives and to bring them cakes and food and letters and support and babysitting and so on and so on. You saw such a good... And then came the Supreme Court. And again, I'm not blaming them, I'm just saying the facts. That's a situation. Meaning, by the time that we're so desperate to find solutions, we start to fight, and overnight, we made 60,000 Chareidi Torah learners as criminals. Now, I'm asking you, now go to Dov Lando and say, Dov Lando, I know that we have a problem and all these Shiva guys became criminal, but what about trying to send some people to the Miluim? We said, again, I'm now fighting about my to be or not to be. So the problem is, and again, I'm doing my best with these complicated conditions,
right, okay.
But talking to the top experts and top politicians, everybody agreed that from all the things that we're talking today about in what way Chareidi can participate, this kind of solution. And if you ask me about the future, what will happen? Okay, let's talk about the future.
Yeah.
First, If that will happen, if people won't start to continue to fight again about the narrative and really encourage people who are willing and creating their own opportunity. And again, the difference between recruiting an 18-year-old boy, yeshiva guy, to the army, or taking a married person who is working, who is already into the life, it's a day and night. So it's much easier. You're not getting into sensitivities and complications. If we will have 5,000, 10,000 people who will do a serious service of the reserve, that will also change the entire attitude of the community. That will build a different trust between the Chareidim, because what happened, by the way, we did a study with people who went to Shlav Bet. Shlav Bet is the short training. Most of them were so disappointed. They said, we came with such a high motivation, and the army did nothing with us. We were begging the army, we want to do a reserve, and most of them didn't even get a chance to do it. I have friends who have specialty, experts in social workers, psychologists, and they went to do the training and said, okay, now we can serve at the army as professionals. We have a profession that can bring to the army. The army sent them back home. They said, why?
So do you think your plan could really work? I mean, there are a lot of complications. It's a great theoretical, it's a great plan, but practically, I mean, with all the issues with the government, with the politicians, with the Gedolei Torah, is it feasible? I agree. If you can get 5,000, then of course you could turn the tide. But how do you get the first 5,000? Because the ones who first go in, remember, they're basically jeopardizing the possibility that they could be excommunicated from their own community. Right?
I'm saying there is already a waiting list of people. We have a list of thousands of people. I'll give just another example. One of the groups that did Shlav Bet, the 2.5 weeks, so the basic level of army training called Rovai F2. Rovai is like Rove, like gun. 02 is the basic level, meaning short training of few days. You can't even get a license then to carry weapons, like very basic. And the higher level is 03 or 05. We have a list of 150 people who went through this F2 and were begging the army that they want to continue to the next stage. And I have the names, I have the list of the people. And by the way, I spoke to the people from Hashmonaim, and they say, it's right, because they came to us and asked for it. And the army said, no. 03 is only for people from Yehuda v'Shomron. Other people were not. I said, why? You have a shortage of people. Give them the opportunity. So if you ask me if I'm optimistic, I'm very optimistic. Right now when I'm here, as I said, I had a conversation this week with Yuli Edelstein, I had a conversation with some other people. There is, as long as we won't be able to solve the problem with the yeshiva boys, it definitely makes it much harder, because I can't imagine a father that will say, okay, I'm ready to go to do miluim when his son is arrested when he's learning in yeshiva. So we are having an issue, but I said the only way I think we can go out of this chaos is by trying to move and make it happen. Meaning showing, by the way, showing the Israeli society, showing the rest of our people, back to what I spoke about Kiddush Hashem. Once we will show that when we're talking about Torah learners, we mean it, because we really care and we're really worried about the future of Torah. But we are not apathic to the concerns and the pain and the burden of our other brothers. And as long as we can do it in the right way, I believe.
I want to ask you a sensitive question, then I want to go to the audience because I want to end this thing in 10 minutes. It's not fair for the people. You have Mishpacha magazine, you have media. Could you ever really write about this, or you can't? No. Okay.
No. I'll explain. My lesson, I'm 35 years in the field of public activity and publication, and as you can see, I'm a big activist and trying my best. When I started my foundation and I started the institute, we started a think tank called the Institute for Strategy and Chareidi Policy. That was the main tool that we built in order to be able to deal with strategic plans and data and so on and so on. I did it because I came to the realization that there is a limit how far Mishpacha can really help in these areas. Because at the end of the day, Mishpacha, A, is a business, and B, it's something that relates to, different kind of segments. In 2010, I tried to address the issue of economy, called it Chareidim 2010, And we said, it's an issue, we have to address it. And we were attacked by a campaign that almost distracted us from the field.
Really? Okay.
So I decided that Mishpacha should do what Mishpacha is doing, and is doing an amazing work. I'm trying totally to separate between church and state. I'm not saying who is the church and who is the state. And the idea is that I have to be sensitive that to do it in a way that I won't harm my main business. Meaning, so I have a clear voice, I'm giving interviews to podcasts, I'm talking in the media, I'm not hiding what I'm doing. But I know that put it into Mishpacha, meaning that Mishpacha is taking a position. So Mishpacha has so much to do in the field that they're doing, but I have the privilege that I have my family foundation.
No, and I appreciate that because you're being honest about it. We don't have that much time, so let's open the floor for a few questions. Go ahead.
Hi, brother. What I'm hearing from you is like the army's not taking my people. These people are not taking my people. You have a town of Beitar with 70, 80,000 Jews.
Okay, have to hear. You want to come?
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
You have a town of Beitar with 70, 80,000 Chareidim directly across the street from a huge Arab village. You have nobody in Beitar who knows how to carry a gun.
Not anymore, but
You had 50. You have
no, much more.
You have every yeshuv had plans. Beitar did nothing. There's really nothing unless you're telling me that something's happened in the past
I
few
can even
weeks.
show you a video of the first course that was done in Beitar for 100 soldiers. Now they have already over 300. But
When?
to
When
the
was
point,
that?
no, a year ago.
Yeah.
A year ago. I'll show you.
And you think that's sufficient?
Absolutely not. That's exactly what I'm trying to
What
say.
are the Gedolim saying about that?
Again,
The Gedolim
the
have to...
Gedolim are now trying to fight the legitimacy of Torah learning in Israel. That's the case.
They have to protect their people. These are
Again,
their people.
I don't disagree with you. I'm saying, so first...
But you're blaming the army for not preparing.
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm here
That's
to make it happen. I'm not blaming. He asked me why it's not happening, so I'm saying the truth. It's not happening. Again, it's not happening
Because the Gedolim aren't letting it happen.
No, nothing to do with the Gedolim. The fact that there is two things. You're asking why the Gedolim are not encouraging.
Yes.
That's one issue. So I'll tell you why they're not encouraging. Okay. Because today they are fighting with their existence of the Torah in Israel. But I met with the top politicians. I met with people from the Chareidim of the Rabbonim. Everybody appreciate this approach, agree about it. The problem is, and again, this is, by the way, just in general to understand the chaos in Israel, the chaos that we are running since the revolution, the judicial reform and so on. One of my close friends went to two of the big Gedolim in Bnei Brak with the idea, not specifically about this program, but in general, why can't we encourage at least reserves, working people to do reserve? So he went to one of the Gedolim, I don't want to mention the name, and he said, it's a great idea, go talk to the other one. You can guess who are the names, but I'm not mentioning. And he went to the other Gedolim, and he said, it's a great idea, but tell me with whom I am doing the deal. Meaning, they're saying that let's do a deal, that it will be under our terms. Under our terms, we'll make sure that people who go to the army will be able to serve with really addressing their sensitivities, halachic needs, and so on and so on. And he said, with whom? So they had conversation with David Zini, a great guy, by the way, Bemet. He's a Torah guy, a serious guy, very close with him. And by the way, he's one of the main supporters of our program. Okay, who is David Zini? Tomorrow David Zini is not there, nobody. There is a mistrust today between the Israeli Chareidi leadership and the Israeli ecosystem and the Israeli politicians. So let's say it's not David Zini, will agree with the chief of staff, the Ramatkal will write, it's called Kudot Matkal. Will make it like a law that this is the rules. And this guy, I'm quoting him, and he said, and tomorrow the Supreme Court will come, or the Attorney General will come and say, no, it's not equal. Meaning we have to work hard to build the trust. I know that you're upset, and you're right that you're upset because it's painful. No, I'm not. I'm saying that's why I'm here.
Protecting these people.
Again,
I have kids who live in Beitar. There's not a gun to be seen there.
No, it's not true. In Beitar today, I'll give you the exact numbers when I'll be back home, but I'll show you the movie soon. In Beitar today, there is over 300 people who are trained specifically to this kind of program.
Yeah.
There is Yechidat Rachfanim in Beitar, voluntarily, that now the army is using them because they're, how you say Rachfanim?
Drones.
Okay? So they build also such a unit voluntarily, and the army is using them, meaning there is a progress in Beitar, but definitely agree with you. But I'm not just talking about Beitar. What about Gush Etzion? What about the main roads? What about some other Jewish cities? We, the Chareidim, must participate in taking care about the needs of Israel, but the situation today is so complicated, and again, I'm not blaming, I'm putting my time, my effort, my money, and even my taking some risk about my business, because I believe that it's crucial. I totally agree with you, but again, not just how to protect Beitar, how we, the Chareidim, can show back to the Kiddush Hashem that we care, that we are ready when it's about partnership, when it's about taking care, we're the first one to do it. But I'm telling you, I'll give you just one more story, okay? I met with Eyal Zamir, okay? Eyal Zamir, today is the chief of staff, but I met with him, we made a presentation maybe 4 months ago when he was still the general director of the Ministry of Defense. And he brought all his experts to the table, the Yoetzet Mishpatit, the legal advisor, his vice president, so on. Everybody, by they fall in love, because the presentation was done by my army people, by the top experts, and agreed. Then Eyal Zamir had one thing to say at the end of the conversation. And he said, I think it's a great idea, but under 2 conditions. A, I want to make sure that bringing so many Chareidim to the army won't change the army. That's something that we have to be very concerned. I understand what he's saying, but I said good luck. Meaning, you can't anticipate that tens of thousands of Chareidim will be in the army, but we still want the army to be the same. No. You want to create a real partnership, real shutafut, okay? So that was one comment that Eyal Zamir said. We have just to make sure that army won't change, meaning there is no open conversation now that there is such a need, so let's try to sit around the table and reevaluate the situation. Now, how we can create like a unit under, I don't know, a carpet that there will be Chareidim. No, how Chareidim can be in the army? No, by the way, not just Chareidim. How can the Talmidim of Yaakov Meidan from the Gush can be in the army? I am constantly having conversation with my friends from the Yeshivot Hesder. They are struggling today with these issues. And I'm not saying it as an excuse. I'm saying we have to face that this is a reality, a very complicated. So that was one comment. And secondly, he said, but that's only for 10 years, because within 10 years, I want to see that naturally all the boys are going. That's a point that he said, okay, like Horat Shah. In the meantime, let's do it. But instead, going back to the first comment, from everything that we said, from all the points, we're coming with revolutionary ideas. We can bring 10, 15,000 Chareidi men to do a serious service, and his main concern is, but I just want to make sure that what? That the army will be still an army that a religious person is not comfortable to serve. Instead of, let's have a conversation, maybe we should also be ready to give up some of our ambitious, progressive, liberal ideas in order to allow Torah observers to be in the army. It's only one side, only Chareidim or religious people.
Okay, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Anybody else? Any other questions? No? Okay, well listen, thank you. Listen, the reason I invited Eli is because, not that he's a friend, but I think he's somebody really trying to do something, and I think he should be supportive. Instead of saying, I know what's wrong, and this is what's wrong, and this is what's wrong, and this is what's wrong. Instead of saying that, let's say, what's right? How do we do something? How do we change the situation? It's a terrible situation. It could lead to a civil war. It's a tremendous chilul Hashem. It's an issue that Israel has to deal with. Every political issue, every politician knows this is a crucial core issue. And here's somebody trying to do it. So let's support him. And that's why I said, come here, because you'll tell us, what do you need for us to do? What kind of PR, what kind of support do you need, whether it's politicians? Whatever we can do, we should try to do. Because if we could find a way of trying to solve this problem step by step, in 10 years from now, it won't be a major problem. Otherwise, it's going to be something that's going to really almost divide all of Israel. So Eli, thank you for devoting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for devoting your time, your energy, your effort, your neshama to this, and I wish you the very, very best of luck. Hatzlacha for the sake of all of us.
And again, thank you so much for having me. And
My pleasure.
I totally agree with you that even before the issue of the security needs and etc., if we want to be able to create an atmosphere that we can live together, and there is a room of appreciation, by the way, from both sides. I'm talking also to my Chareidi brothers. You know, you have your concerns about the Torah. Are you also aware of the pain and the concerns that some other people have? Okay, you're right. You have to make sure the Torah will stay. And I think once we will have a conversation that each side will understand the concerns and the core issues of each side, and we will have a constructive conversation, I think can build a Kiddush Hashem, can build unity, and also can strengthen the security.
Yes, Hashem. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And good night.
It's a tough issue.
Chareidi,